Hello, and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we continue a retrospective we call Dead Writers Writing with the 1970 film. This is the same year as our last movie, the 1970 film, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. This is episode 322. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. And also in Denver, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. And Drew is not with us this evening. He has the week off, and we miss him dearly. All right. The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which is also called in some places The Murder in the Gallery, is a 1970 Giallo film directed by Dario Argento in his Giallo debut. The film has been credited with popularizing the Italian Giallo genre, and we're going to talk about what the heck that means. It's the first installment in Dario Argento's Animal Trilogy, followed by The Cat o' Nine Tails and Four Flies on Grey Velvet. The film was nominated for an Edgar Allan Poe Award for Best Motion Picture in 1971. Upon its release, it was a big hit. It earned about $1 million US dollars, about twice what it cost to make. It made Argento, and it really determined the course of Argento's career from then out, because he had made about 6 pictures before, and they were all like gangster and Western and spy movies. So it was a success in the United States and in Spain. So this is The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. So let's get opening thoughts. I think we should turn to Julia, then Tony, and then I'll go. Julia, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, tell me what you thought.
Well, it's interesting. I know you've always been a big fan of the Giallo pictures, and this is the one that sort of made... It wasn't necessarily the first one to exist, but it was the first one to be famous. And the film, apparently written in 5 days, played in Milan, in a Milan cinema for 3.5 years because people were so into it. It's very interesting. It's definitely stylistically just, I guess gorgeous, but I'm thinking there's another word that it's not coming to me, but it's just really... just interesting. Everything, all the choices I think were pretty creative. It's, the plot, it is a good little whodunit. I pretty much knew from the beginning that it was a woman, but I didn't know which one. That was twisty for me. And I think, I think there was the characters are interesting. The acting, the performances are pretty decent. Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was pretty well done.
Fantastic. Tony, what are your opening thoughts?
I like the movie a lot. I think you and I got to see it at the Draft House. Not positive if it was during one of the Tarantino fests or not, but
I worked out that it came to the Alamo during the first batch of the Something Weird truck that.
That would have been, because I remember I'd heard a lot about it. I'd seen clips from it, but I'd never seen it in its entirety until we saw it at the Colorado Draft House at the time. Man, I missed $10 pizza night.
Yes.
That was that was amazing. But I also forgotten, I was joking, that within the first 10 minutes with mod clothing and mystery twists and murder, that this is also all the things Jason likes in a movie, the movie, within at least 10 minutes. Like the first 10 minutes are everything. That's not a knock. That's not I'm
right.
joking. Like, oh yeah, this is.
This one's for Jason.
I think we all have our things where you can go, oh, I think this person's gonna really dig this. But like from the costumes of a mod woman walking with go-go boots and then leading to a murder with very stylized action, I quickly realized yet again, like, oh yeah, this is it. And it is funny that this kind of set the stage, because there's a lot of stylistic things we'll talk about throughout that are really fascinating. I did forget, and again, if you haven't seen it and you want the mystery to remain, like, spoilers, just
I actually forgot to read that part. Yes, this is going to be a spoiler-filled review, so go off and watch it and come back if you have not seen The Bird with the Crystal Plumage.
We're going to talk about the twists and everything. There's a couple things I don't like as much, and I was reminded of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, has everything about, European thriller of the 70s, warts and all. So for
Yeah.
some people there's a few things here and there on, I think in general, like it's not kind to, I won't get into it, but it's definitely of a time, and you can see the parts where you're like, wow, I don't think I would have made those choices.
Yeah.
Now.
Yes. I hope you bring those up when we get to them.
And it's tough. So your mileage may vary on that. I think it's fascinating to watch, and it really, there's some just super fantastic camera work and things that we come to think of as not only Argento, but a lot of Italian horror that we enjoy share the DNA with kind of how these stories are told.
Yes.
And I think the acting and some of the way the plots twist, but it's gorgeous in what it does. It's probably not for everyone, but it's worth, if you want to see the beginnings of I think a lot of people who enjoy the show probably I think agree with us on enjoyment of Eurotrash, enjoyment of Giallo, enjoyment of Italian horror, European horror, and to see that start to really formulate and kind of move forward is pretty fascinating.
Thank you very much. I'm going to say my opening thought and then go straight into a discussion of genre. So, opening thought, I was so amazed at this because I haven't seen it. I believe when we watched it, I'm pretty certain that was 2001. So that was 19 years ago, and so I had forgotten almost everything. I mean, I worked that out, by the way, because there was an article in the Austin Chronicle when Tim League announced that he had purchased a truck full of old beat up film reels, and he was going to start this Wednesday thing where the movies would be free and they'd run specials on food, and it would be a midnight show. And this was one of the titles that had been included in that. So we saw, a 35 millimeter print of this on the screen, a beat up old print that had been moldering somewhere.
Well, I mean, it was crazy. That was a cool experiment, not to get too far aside, but the idea that, hey, we're going to show these on Wednesdays when, maybe Wednesdays at midnight, which weren't a big time. The whole idea was who's going to show up. All the weird film freaks are going to, only film freaks are going to show up on a Wednesday at midnight.
Yeah, right.
And we're going to do this then because there's very low stakes, right? Yes. At first, you didn't even have to pay. You just hey, everybody buy some food. Eventually, they had to kind of make people at least buy a food voucher because a lot of people weren't buying food, and that was kind of how it was paid for. But the idea was, hey, let's run it through a projector. Yes. And sometimes the film would break, or sometimes the reels would be out of order, or any number of things, right?
Right.
So that was the whole idea was, hey, we have this truckload of films. Let's run through a projector and see what the hell. Sometimes the films didn't even have labels or were incorrectly labeled.
Yes.
That's crazy.
So it's kind of a treat because you really didn't know exactly what you were doing.
It's like the storage wars where people are just betting on, or
very much,
bidding on whatever's in the storage closet, in the storage.
It's even better because it had an almost adventure element at one point, a very low stakes adventure element, because they talked about driving over the mountains, and the truck was so full that they had a hard time going up, and so they were dropping off prints in places so they could actually drive.
Wow.
So it's like being in a hot air balloon.
Sort of, kind of.
Right. We're gonna have to just let this one drop.
I have to mention, when Tony said we saw this at the Colorado Draft House, he means specific Colorado Street, the original Alamo Draft House in its location there, across from Stonefish or whatever it's called. Anyway, long gone now.
Another part of Austin raising the rent, because there's nothing even there, I don't think, anymore. So they raised the rent and pushed them out.
Yeah.
And then failed to fill it because the rent was too high. Go figure. We had a lot of good times at that place, but it was just such a crazy, cool period. Sorry to derail your opening.
No, that's really
memories, and it was such a cool thing. Let's just run movies through and hope they don't break. And then what's good, we'll re-show them at some point. If the print is good, we'll keep that print. If the
we
print
saw Demons,
is a mess,
Demons and Demons 2. The 80s Italian thing, and so much, Great Smoky Roadblock.
My favorite story, and again, I don't want to turn this too much
into
no,
please, go ahead.
Story is Jason telling two women at work, hey, comes the Weird Wednesdays, it's really cool. my friend Tony and I. And that movie, because you don't always know what it's going to be, the movie was The Sinful Dwarf. And let me tell you, that movie is one that's a very select audience anyway.
Yeah.
But to invite two women who are coworkers, hey, guess what? We're gonna go watch films. One of the Simple Dwarf is not one you would choose.
Lest you think he learned his lesson at that point, he did not. He has continued to invite coworkers to very weird things for many years.
Yeah. That one especially was me going, Jason, what? Did you get HR called? Like, what happened with you inviting people? I mean, I don't care who you are. The Simple Dwarf, regardless, might get like, hey, come see this cool movie with me. That might get you an HR call regardless.
Just so we understand, The Sinful Dwarf, I don't even know if they announced what the movie was. So I just like general call out to the workers, say, hey,
Join
everybody.
the movies on Wednesdays. Right. Join us.
Movies,
right.
Get some pizza, come out and have a good time with Jason. Get to know what Jason's all about. And, and it's a 1973 Danish movie. It turns out, because Danish movie about a dwarf who, like, I don't know, it's awful.
He and his mom kidnap women, drug them, and prostitute them.
Yes. Not a yeah.
And
so that was
rough. I mean, it is not. I didn't. Who knows? With all the weird Wednesdays, you never know quite at the time, especially knew what to expect.
I don't think I've ever seen anything quite that rough at the Alamo.
Did you have to apologize?
I think I have.
Oh yes, no. I sent a note saying, "Hey guys, that was sure an experience." So I apologize.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely way more wild. It was definitely weirder Wednesday and way more Wild West than it kind of became.
Yeah.
And, for better or worse. But I definitely, it's an interesting movie. But again, it's not, I would have so many caveats if I was actually to show or tell somebody to see it.
I cannot imagine for all the world that you would recommend The Sinful Dwarf.
I know people who do. You're on a certain wavelength when you're going, hey, this is a really rough movie.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So.
What a time.
Yeah, bygones. So that's 2001. So what I was thinking about was I had forgotten a lot about The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. And watching it this time, I realized that I have sold Dario Argento short because the compositions here are so good. And
this is his first film as a director.
This is his first Giallo film. I mean, he made war movies.
It's his first solo director film.
Is that the case? Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's what IMDb says. I'm trusting IMDb to know its business. I don't know.
No, you're exactly right. He had been a writer before then. And so this is his, well, anyway, so it's his first directorial film. He is it's very strong. It shows an extremely good eye. And the reason I bring this up is about a year or so ago, I interviewed the woman who organizes the Scream Screen festival, series in Denver. And she's an expert on movies like I will never be. And I said, we saw Dracula 3D, and that's a Dario Argento movie. And I said, it's made me question, do we have to reevaluate Dracula 3D? And she said, let me tell you my theory. Her theory is that Argento didn't actually make Dracula 3D. That it's
I think I've said that too.
Yeah.
When I look at the credits, again, if you like the movie, cool in the gang, whatever.
Yeah.
But when I looked at the credits for that movie and was so disappointed because there's so many good or fun or weird, enjoyable Argento movies, the list of credits makes it look like the crew there made the movie from the way it's laid out. And that's a theory I've had since I saw it and was just puzzled absolutely at how that film got made.
Yeah.
And it's so drastically different than this
it's different from any Argento movie I've seen. It's different from opera. It's different from Suspiria. It's different. It has none of the artistic touches that you associate. And this isn't like Carpenter, semi-phoning it in because he's doing a TV version of a Village of the Damned. This is different from that because Carpenter is still Carpenter, and so it's still. This was like I think it's very possible that Argento was around and just not even really involved.
I thought I still hold, and again, everybody hopefully people got paid. Who knows? But I still hold to the theory that he put his name on it. Just especially like I said, the way it lists the interns, the way it. I don't know. It's a hunch I had since I saw Dracula 3D, but this is not that. It's such it's a shame because it's like you said, where you go, wow, what happened?
Right.
And that's nobody wants to go out that way.
Yeah.
No. You do what you do to pay the bills. I totally get it. But this is, seeing this and where it starts. This is the beginning. Is fascinating, and I wish that movie had more of this and less of almost everything that it has.
Right. And so anyway, enough said about Dracula 3D. If you're interested in our thoughts on that, we do have an episode on it. So feel free to look for that. But I wanted to talk. I chose this movie because this is a short retrospective that we've been doing on movies about writers, and they've tended to be Italian movies, and two of them were versions of the same film. I don't exactly know how we got here, but sometimes I just fill out the list, but this one I knew was worth doing. So first, I wanted to talk about Giallo. Like, what is Giallo? When we say this is like the first Giallo picture that just really caught fire and made people sit up and notice. And the general principle for Giallo is that it is, I think Drew, who holds a very expansive view of horror films, and he'll often say a thriller is just a horror film, in its night clothes. A thriller is a gussied up horror film. Giallo is also, in a sense, horror, but they're thrillers. They're almost always, they bear certain things. They are generally Italian. They are generally about a mystery involving a killer who is. These are things you see over and over and over.
Yeah, but you also have to go back. It's pulp.
Yeah. Tell us about the movie.
Yellow obviously means yellow. Yeah, right. So what does that have to do with the movie?
Well, it came from the mystery. The cheap paperback mystery novels had yellow covers. Mm-hmm. So those were Giallo novels, which then turned into pulpy movies that, so these lurid crime pulp novels, and then which begot lurid crime pulpy movies.
Right.
And at the basis there, the joke, there's a documentary, if I'm not mistaken, called All the Colors of Giallo, which is kind of a play on, hey, it really just means yellow. So I thought that was actually,
that's brilliant.
Hopefully that was the clever thing to do. But
no, it's very clever, and it's a great way of just again making you aware of this genre and want to go deeper into it. And on Amazon Prime, they just have so many Giallo pictures just included with Prime. So I'm always spotting one that I've never seen before, and it's really cool. Like, I discovered one the other day that I haven't finished watching called A Blade in the Dark, which is about a composer who's borrowed a house and there's a killer around. There's typically.
I need to finish that one too, actually.
Yeah, right. There's typically a hooded killer, the motifs of like black gloves and covered faces, and there's usually a detective, an amateur detective drawn in, maybe working with the police, maybe unjustly accused. And more than this, these are color. These are always color, and the color is usually quite vibrant. And the other thing that, if you're new to the genre, that you might be sort of weirded out by, is that they're always dubbed, and I mean heavily dubbed. The films were made MOS, which Tony, can you tell us what MOS means? Do you recall this?
They don't usually roll sound, right?
No sound at all, so that they can.
It's cheap. And you can dub it everywhere. Also, Rain's been reading about Italy a lot. And there's almost, from what she was reading through several things, there's almost no subtitling at all. So everybody gets redubbed. There's actually a really good documentary we saw about the people who are the voices of Italian dubbing, pretty much.
Really?
And, you'll see somebody who I don't... Oh, there's a great bit where local cool person and actually really nice guy Elijah Wood meets his dub person.
Oh, really?
He's the guy who's like, "Hey, I've dubbed all your movies," and they meet in this documentary. It's really was really kind of cool. He's a nice guy. But
well, and there's that movie that you turned me on to very recently. Barbarian Sound Studio, I believe it's
Barbarian
called.
Sound Studio. Oh, I love that movie. It's not
Yes.
for everyone, but oh man, is it good.
It's a really wonderful sort of just salute to Giallo about a guy who is, you know, working on the sound for a Giallo picture, and it's fantastic. But
we also need to do In Fabric, which is one of the best homages to Italian horror. Not so much Giallo, because you'll see a lot where people, well, this is Giallo, this isn't. So it's more Italian horror. That of course Giallo films are the seed for that, right? As we move forward, especially with Argento.
I haven't seen it yet.
Before you move off of the dubbing thing, I wanted to say that Hugh Grant says that it's really weird when you're doing the press junket for an animated film, because you end up going to countries where they've dubbed your animated character, so you're not actually in the movie.
Right. Of course.
You're doing the press tour anyway, which I thought was pretty funny.
That's really
pretty
cool.
Good. We should do In Fabric. I've been trying to get this for a couple years. We should do that eventually. It's a really great homage. So I like that. But yeah, the whole thing is, well, we're going to save money and sometimes time by not having to worry about rolling sound and getting that clear, and then we're all going to dub it afterwards.
Right, and everybody dubs themselves if they're available. So if for the English market, an American actor who's already the star will do his own dubbing. Here you've got two English-speaking actors, Susie, Kendall, and Tony Musante, who dub their own voices, and then everybody else will be dubbed into English. Yep.
Apparently, that guy was horrible to work with.
Oh, really?
That's what. The IMDb says that Dario Argento really couldn't stand him and hated working with him because he would just show up at his place, like interrogate him about the character and all this stuff. Which I thought was kind of funny.
So some people, it's interesting too, because some directors would be like, "Oh wow, you really care about this." But I could see, depending on the director, going, "Good night, just it's a crime thriller. Just don't even worry. You're gonna go from place to place, and you're set up."
No, the problem was he'd show up at 3 a.m. So that was the.
Oh yeah, screw that. You can stay at the gate or whatever. I also love, since we're talking about how it's the writers, dead writers writing.
Yes,
I love the beginning. This is great, where he's turned in his gig, and he's turned in his manuscript. He gets the check, and they're like, "Don't you want a copy?" And he's like, "This is all I need." And he holds up the check.
Money.
Which so many people don't understand that's often, as a writer, that's kind of true.
Yeah,
you spent your time with it. Thank you. As long as the check clears, not everything, of course, right?
No, but
it's so. It also sets up how his character thinks, which is great. But I thought that scene, that really solidified the writing part. And actually, that's, for a retrospective, that's kind of the only bit we get to see him as a writer, other than people going, "Hey, you're a writer."
Yeah. Well,
it's not important to the plot.
Well, and writers are a really good person for, it's an homage, but it's also just the way these things work. It goes back to stuff like The Third Man. You make somebody a writer. The great thing about a writer is they don't have a day job. So they just wander around.
Right.
Yeah, so they can just kind of go anywhere. People kind of think that's sort of cool, so they'll let you in places. And
if you're a thriller, if you're a mystery writer, that's a great one, because you're doing research a lot anyway, so you'll have an inside scoop.
Yes.
And if you're famous, and it's a great plot device too, because if you're just famous enough, people are willing to talk to you.
Yeah, that's what Jason said. Once our main character is no longer the suspect and he's just kind of hanging around, Jason goes, and now he's the Jessica Fletcher of Italy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
This guy, Tony Musante, he actually was, he was nominated for an Emmy in 1975. He starred in a show called Toma that he left after a year because he was sick of doing it. He was a working actor who got some recognition, died at 77 in 2013, was married from 1962 to 2013. So, somebody got along with him. That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
I guess he wasn't waking his wife up at 3:00 in the morning.
To talk about characters? What, you don't like that? That's not a good idea.
I think that if that ever happened, you learned your lesson because it never happened again. And then who is Jason the husband, or who was the husband at any given point of the character of Julia, the actress who played Julia? Who did you tell me?
I actually don't know the name of that actor.
No. You said that she was married to Dudley Moore, didn't you?
Oh, yes. No, I'm sorry. So yeah, our character Sam, played by Tony Musante, is now living with this girl that he apparently has met in Rome, and he's going to bring back to the United States with her. She's English. It's played by Susie Kendall, who is like in all of these movies around this period. Very pretty girl. Her character is a model. Susie Kendall, who was in To Serve with Love, was married to Dudley Moore, actually, and I don't know how long they were married. Maybe a long time, but which was
an interesting little detail.
It really is. Yeah, beautiful actress.
A lot of stuff from this guy, though, I will have to say.
Yes. They were married from 1968 to 1972. It says. So there we go. That's
yeah. So she's Anyway, so how do you want to start going through the plot?
Well, I say we just start with the amazing opening. What it's an extended sequence. There's sort of a pre-opening bit where we see Sam, the American writer, with his buddy. And they are
start with the typing.
Yeah. Well, okay, Julia, tell us about because that's an amazing framing. The thing we'll keep coming back to is the whole film is beautifully framed. We will not walk through the whole thing frame by frame like this, I promise. But yeah, tell us about the framing of the first shot.
Yeah, just the credits. Yeah, just the opening credits are we see a desk from above, and then the black gloved hands typing on a typewriter, right? Or they're black gloved?
That's right. Yeah. You are not imagining that. Somebody alone in their study is typing with black gloves on.
Right.
And then we are taking spy shots, somebody is, of this very model looking girl walking down the street, as Tony mentioned, wearing full 1970 regalia with their go-go boots and a short dress and like little, a short bob, this whole model look, and then
like a page haircut.
Yes, yeah, very, very pretty cut, and then we cut past that to the announcement that there's been yet another murder. So we establish there are murders going on. We meet our guy Sam. He's an American writer in Rome. I asked Julia, our resident immigration specialist, like on what visa could he possibly be working in Rome for like 6 months? And she says,
which I said, I don't do Italian immigration, but if it was America, you can have a 6-month tourist visa.
So one of the things that Rain's been looking into, actually, Italy is currently one of the easier places to get dual citizenship.
No kidding.
So Rain's been on Duolingo and actually working on that. Just
wow.
Because of the way her family came in and just how that all works. Like that's been a thing for the past few months. Like, let me see if I can do this. So
wow.
Yeah, I think if election had gone a little differently, I'd be looking into some dual.
It was partially that, and then also like, why the hell not? And hey, what if one day we do want to just go?
Yeah.
And there's a chance I could possibly go through her, but I actually have to know.
You're Italian too, so you'd probably
but it's a whole thing anyway. But it is interesting because it's one of the easier. I mean, things are challenging all over now, but side trivia, dual citizenship is easier through Italy.
So we've established that Sam is a writer. He's walking back to his flat, and now we get to this amazingly framed shot that everybody includes screenshots of on the web because it's the thing that everybody I think remembers more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
He's walking down the street. He looks across at an art gallery that is brightly lit on this dark street, and through this whole thing, there are so many visual layers of the shot that Argento is messing with, because you can see across the street through more glass into this multi-level, dual level. There's a flight of stairs with no banister, and then up on the mezzanine there are two figures struggling. So he spots this crime in process, and he runs across it, and he goes through the open glass door into this sort of entrance vestibule that's just a big glass rectangle.
And so but before that happens, you see somebody gets stabbed, and the other person who has done the stabbing is in a black coat and a black hat and jumps off the stairs. That was pretty impressive little stunt right there. They jump off like the second to top step up down to the bottom landing and then run off. And the person who's been stabbed, the woman who's been stabbed, starts to kind of stumble around, and that's when he runs into the vestibule, and the figure that's just run off somehow pushes a button to close the door behind him, so that now he's trapped between a glass
Sam is trapped.
wall. Sam's trapped between a glass wall that's on the street side and the glass wall to the gallery, so he can't get to the woman or to the police or any place else. Okay, now.
Yeah, and it's an amazing sequence, because this woman who's inside the gallery who has been stabbed, she stumbles down to the floor. She's stumbling towards Sam, and we actually think, watching this, well, this woman is going to die. I mean, she really seems to be dying.
But it's not serious. It's only a flesh wound.
Well, that is a weird thing. After so before we move on to this, I just want to point out, because he's trapped in this damn vestibule, basically, you got the wounded woman on one side, and then he talks to a passerby, and the police come. And all the time, Argento keeps playing with looking at and framing all of the layers that you can see. It's just really wild.
It's remarkable that you never see a camera in the reflection. There's so many reflections in these glass walls, and you never see the camera. And I don't know how. I mean, it's pretty impressive, I think.
Yes.
Well, there's that, and the other thing eventually I want to talk about, all the POV stuff that's in this is amazing as well. But you may feel however you want to feel about how the plot to some of these movies, or how Argento tells a story. You may or may not like that, but you can't fault how he shoots a film.
Right.
It's truly, you may not be along for the ride all the time, depending on your sensibilities. However, the stuff that he's doing is fascinating.
Mm-hmm. And their location scouts are great. Like, there's some beautiful sets, and it's just gorgeous pieces. The thing that they did, you were talking about the POV. Fast forward to later on when somebody falls to their death, they did that effect by just dropping a camera off the
Right.
Yeah. They broke the camera. They killed the camera, but they got the footage.
That's amazing. That's really
pretty
cool.
Expensive at the time, and you got
still,
hope you can keep all the film.
Cameras are not cheap.
Yeah,
you'd have to weight it properly so that the lens would stay pointed at the ground all the way. I guess that's not that impossible, but what a neat thing you'd have to engineer to do. So yes, the police come along. It turns out that the woman who was stabbed is Monica, and she's gonna make it. She's only semi-conscious and not saying any words, but they say, "Oh, she'll be fine, thanks to you." Now, we're just gonna let this go, because there is no explanation. I'm not a doctor, so what do I know? But I mean, she's been stabbed in the gut, and she's bleeding, and she's been knocked unconscious by it, but she's gonna be fine.
She's not actually unconscious, to be honest with you. She kind of is like in and out of consciousness, but it's possible. Whatever. I mean,
we're just gonna go with it.
Depending on where you get stabbed, people survive.
Right.
Maybe she just lost a lot of blood and stayed her delirious. Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea is interrupted.
Yeah.
So had he not come along, she would have been stabbed probably more times, or at least have bled out.
Right. Maybe. That makes sense. Yeah. So the police, the first thing they want to do is talk to this American writer who witnessed this crime, because he's a really good suspect for it. I mean, he's right here in the entrance. He's trapped so that he's not able to get out. So in theory, he could have stabbed her and then ran into this entrance vestibule and then not been able to escape. So they take his passport
But it was so sneaky. I love this. I love the detective, I have to say. The detective is a great character. So he's like, "Oh, hey, so, tell me, like, let's go over this for the 7th time." And Sam's getting really fed up. And he's like, "Oh, my God, I'm so sick of talking about this." And then he's like, "Look," he's like, "I'm going to be gone, going back to America day after tomorrow." And he's like, "Oh, do you have a reservation already?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Hey, do you happen to have your passport on you?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, just take a look at it for just a minute." And then he just sticks it in his drawer. He's like, "What the?"
Right.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
That's pretty funny.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So they don't arrest him per se, and in fact, even though in theory he's kind of a suspect, the movie just sort of hand waves what level of a suspect he is. Maybe the detective is like, I'm going to let him run around so I can watch him and see. But basically what happens is Sam decides the only way that he's going to get to go back to the United States is if he becomes basically an independent detective, and he will check back in with the police whenever he has information. And so Sam starts working the case, and it's really cool.
And they totally give him all the information, and they let him in. He's just part of the.
Oh yeah, no, he
team.
watches them as suddenly the movie becomes like super high tech too, because they're like, all right, we're going to gather all the information we have and stick it into this computer, and it'll tell us how many possible suspects in Rome we have that fit what you know.
I mean, it looks, kind of hilariously low tech now.
Yes.
But I love the fact that it becomes this high tech crime drama, because he's really playing with stuff that now, especially now it looks dated. Like when it prints out that this is what this person may look like, it's in, dot matrix.
Yeah, I love that so much.
But
that's great.
But really, I mean, that was like, whoa, you can do that,
right?
This is 1970, so
I gotta say,
playing with a lot of high concept stuff that is ahead of the game, I think, at this time, especially in a pulpy crime drama.
Yes,
crime thriller. I might say that hey, we're gonna feed this in the computer and we'll get this information, and the way the computer tech is approaching it, and as a detective and such, this is some Alias stuff.
The well, and there's a realism to it also, because what it spits out is not, it's helpful but not that helpful,
right? Well, the guy goes, so we want to we'll get right on identifying 150,000 alibis,
right?
I do want to say that
when people go, can't you enhance? Like, no, by the way, the grainy camera, thanks, stupid TV shows. No, pixels. You can't, there's no enhancement to that. Actually, I think now there is some of that you can do. We're just catching up to that.
But anyway, but I want to say, before we get too far past him being a suspect, before when he's first a suspect, the detective says, we have a theory that this person who committed these crimes is actually really sane, and you're sane, which I thought, that's a super weird thing to say, number one. Why do they think that? And then they turn out to be wrong anyway. Like, the person who did it is completely nuts. So that was kind of a weird thing. I just wanted to mention that, because that's
a very good point. Yeah. It's dropped, really.
Computers can't tell you everything.
Right. There's something else that they drop later, because he's supposed to have later on some police guards watching him, because he becomes kind of an important witness.
His girlfriend.
And sometimes they're there as mincemeat, and sometimes they're just not even there. I mean, I don't know. I don't know from Italian police.
I think this feels, look, I can't speak because I haven't lived there for any length of time, but it feels very much how European, especially Italian, cops are portrayed.
Yes.
Like, there's a, hey, we're watching you, but
it's a coffee break time. We have to.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Although I do know, like, when I went and we were in St. Mark's and coming across a guard who had an Uzi. That was the first time I've ever seen a cop. I felt like I acted like a suspect just because I turn a corner and there's a guy with an Uzi.
Yeah.
Who's just stationed there. I kind of was taken aback.
Yeah, you get used to seeing the Carabinieri wandering around with those Uzis. I remember they were outside the American Express back in the day.
Sure.
It's an Italian gun. They get it for discount, I'm sure. So.
But it was impressive at the time. But the way that the cops are portrayed here feels very, I'm sure some of it is true, and some of it, in the same way our cop dramas are, is a stereotype.
Yeah.
But it does,
supposed to be familiar to the audience, right?
Right.
Like that detective, he's serious and he wants to get the job done. Everyone else,
Yeah. So there probably are guards. They're mostly around. Let's put that way.
So
they're not around when they need to be.
That's the truth.
So one of the and by the way, in amongst this, I want to say the murders keep happening. So if I'm jumping out of order, I apologize. But I just want to mention that the next murder is this woman in her apartment building, and this is yet another just really astonishing framing. by Argento. Julia, do you recall this? Looking up at the staircases.
Oh my god, that was gorgeous. That was so. They actually called Dario Argento like the Alfred Hitchcock of Italy or whatever. That was such a Hitchcock shot. There's this. That's what I mean when I say that it's not just the cinematography and the direction, but also just the location scouting, because they found this building with this triangular staircase, so that when you're looking up, like in Vertigo, you look up through a whole bunch of landings. But instead of it being circular, it's a triangle. It's gorgeous. I was like, this is the most unusual angle. Yeah.
Fantastic. And what I enjoy about his direction and the cinematography, his DP also, anybody who's part of lensing this film deserves credit. But their location scouting, like you said, like it's not just cool places. It's cool places that set up tension.
Yeah.
I think that's really where the strength lies. It's oh, that's neat. It's a triangular staircase. But the way he uses all of these locations to not only just look cool, but to build tension within them that's such a skill.
Yeah.
That's really well said. Yeah.
So somehow this killer, this is why I thought it was a woman. I actually thought it was a woman from the get-go, because the killer gets into places easily that are locked, that you shouldn't be able to, and women can get in to places a lot easier than men, because people kind of wave women in more than they'll wave in some strange guy. And so that was one of the reasons, but there were several reasons why I thought that. But also the figure, the figure always seemed to be really trim. But anyway, so this person somehow has managed to get into this building before our victim, and so like you said, it built a lot of tension to have all those stairs, and then
we were talking about what it'd be like to live in a building like this, because what happens is the lady, she goes in, she goes and punches the button for the elevator doesn't come. And I was saying, you love that you could rent an apartment in one of these old buildings, but Julia was just listing off all the things that are not so cool, such as elevator goes out, lighting in the hallways. I'm sure that the plumbing probably
cracks everywhere. Yeah, exactly.
And it's probably quite quaint and bohemian
also
to do for a year.
Also, you're dealing with when you're dealing with an old city as well. That's the other thing that we forget about unless you go to Europe. There's cottages that are like older than our country.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
Like there's old cottages that are, not to mention just, all the castles and everything like that, but they're living quarters that families have lived in longer than our country has existed. And so there's varying states of, especially in Italy, where all of it's complicated as far as building things and how many abandoned buildings you see and how refurbishing things can and can't work. It's a very crazy system. It's very, very crazy. It's very complicated. Let me put it that way. The more I've read about it, the more I've kind of talked to people. So yeah, you're exactly right. Like that elevator, the reason she probably is so nonchalant is it probably happens all the time.
Yeah,
it probably never works, right?
I wouldn't want to ride it ever, because I'd be worried it was going to break down while I was in it, and I'm claustrophobic.
Right.
And so she climbs up the stairs. She's taken aback whenever the light turns off at the top.
Yes,
that doesn't seem normal. That seems weird. Like, oh, I don't feel good about this. But you can forget about how, like I said, just remodeling something that old. This looks fairly modern in the way that it's built. But I'm with Julia.
Yeah. And it's anyway, we don't need to go into it too much, but it's a straight razor slashing. Slashes the girl to death. So yet another girl.
It is pretty brutal. I had forgotten.
It's a violent movie.
It is a really violent movie that pulls some punches by modern standards, perhaps, but still was a little bit more brutal than I remembered. The killings are slightly darker than things I've been watching lately. But that's part and parcel.
When you say that, what do you mean by that, Tony? When you say the killings are slightly darker?
Oh, I just tend to watch less slashery things lately.
Oh yeah,
on my own. Like that's just me.
Sure.
And so, kind of coming back to this, like, oh yeah, I'd forgotten.
Yeah,
that's brutal. But
it's not Suspiria level.
It doesn't feel. doesn't feel like an affront, like, look how because Giallo did get a lot of, hey, why are all these violent things? Well, it's kind of lower class. Also because it came from pulpy novels, in the same way that pulp movies here in the States were like, oh, you want to watch that trash. It's interesting. I find it fascinating what's shown and what's not, because it could be a lot more violent.
Oh yeah.
But I do
Gorehounds
feel
would be
like
really disappointed. There's nothing. There's very little, like. This isn't even Suspiria, which gets like way gory.
Well, I think that this also, the way it's shot, in the same way, I think it goes back to the Hitchcock reference. Many people, like we talked about before, view the shower scene in Psycho as way more violent than it actually what's caught on film, because you're filling in the blanks. I think this is shows more than that, of course, in its brutality. I think it's more brutal as far as what you see, what's actually captured on camera. But it doesn't go straight for complete brutality or complete gore.
Right.
Absolutely not. We'll see eventually.
Which is very expert. It makes us shocked by the level of violence, even without showing us too much.
Right.
And I guess that's more in keeping with this genre than with the straight horror genre, like Suspiria is, to keep calling to that other Argento movie. Meanwhile, Sam has been talking to anybody connected to these killings. One of the girls who got killed was a prostitute, so he goes to visit a very strange cat pimp in a prison. By the way, again, Sam really gets around. I mean, he can interview anybody. So he talks to this pimp who is almost comic relief. He has a stutter.
Well, also, again, this is weird because so you have things that are definitely we just have different sensibilities now. And to call those out specifically, you do have a point where they say, "Hey, bring all the perverts in."
Yes.
But then I love that he goes, no, I told you so-and-so goes with the transvestites, not the perverts. And I was like, wow, that's pretty progressive of 1970 to go.
It's progressive, but then it's also played, like I go back and forth because that part is sort of progressive, but it also is intent on, hey, that's still being a deviant.
Yes.
Right. And so
that's true.
That is more complicated.
Well, obviously, the person who's putting the person into the lineup thinks that, but actually the person who says, no, I keep telling you that's not the right group, is actually not necessarily see. I mean, obviously the culture saw them as deviants at the time. But
it's handled. And then there's the guy who's in the art.
Yeah, take us to the next visit, which is the shop.
There's the shop.
Is this one of the things that you found vague, and I would not be at all surprised, and I agree, slightly offensive?
Well, I mean, again, I think if people watch this movie now, depending on your age and what you like and what you want, like the fact that the shopkeeper is gay, who also immediately is kind of aggressively onto our main character, who kind of plays it off, but he's also, there's this interplay that's almost played for comedy, but also it's kind of meant to, that the shopkeeper's off-putting in that way.
Yeah.
And
do we know that Dario Argento was straight or gay?
Oh, he's straight.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But I just, how that's handled is, I would hope people would handle it differently now in the way that is filmed.
Oh no,
it's very like the aggression in the way that it's handled just feels.
Yeah, but I disagree, because I think that I disagree that they would handle it differently, because that's the character choice for this character, is that this character is obnoxiously aggressive, just like so many characters are with women all the time in all movies. And now or at any given time, you'll have a character and you'll be like, wow, this person is constantly hitting on every woman that comes near him. You can see that as charming, or you can see it as obnoxious, depending on who you are. I think that's the case here. That's why I asked if he was gay or not, because I could see it either way. I could see it as this character is obnoxious, or you could say gay people always hit on men.
The problem is one of context.
Given the time period, it was more likely that, like, the way it's played, I didn't notice it as, or it's been years, so I didn't think about it.
All he's doing is getting in his face. He's not like physically harassing him. He's just kind of like following him around.
But he's very well. That's the whole point. That's part of what I'm talking about. Is there's a almost comedy bit where Sam is passing back and forth this thing to prevent him from
getting close to him.
I still think
getting
we
at him.
have those characters now. I feel like that character shows up in a lot of movies all the time. Like where it'd be like, "Oh, you're cute," and I don't necessarily think that there aren't a lot of gay guys who are that way. You know, but like, "Hey, you're cute," and they're just kind of like, and also straight men for sure, are that way constantly with women. You know, so
I feel like it's played differently, in my opinion. I mean,
Well, I mean, I just want to. Go ahead.
We've talked a lot about different sensibilities and people who and you know, people's enjoyment of movies, and going, hey, well, I don't enjoy, even though I know this is at a time, this isn't really my bag because of this portrayal or this or that.
Right.
And I think that's valid. Again, for me, I'm not the arbiter of what makes you want to enjoy a movie or feel comfortable or not. That's not for me to decide. So
yeah, I mean,
but it played to me a lot differently.
People who are going to be bothered by how things were portrayed in 1970 are going to be bothered by a lot of things, not just that. Because, like I say, I mean, if we're going to say that about this guy, you got to say it every time a guy is that way with a woman, and that's like most of the movies we watch.
No, I agree. I think what you're saying is totally valid. And again, is it Garula, right? The pimp.
Mm-hmm.
He obviously has has disabilities.
Yes.
And that's again portrayed in a different manner than we might see. It's the way he talks, and again, like I said, it may be unintentional, may just be the way it's read, the way it was dubbed. But there's a feeling of, hey, that's this guy. It's almost, it's not comedic exactly. But
it's sort of look at the weirdos that Sam is going to have to wade through.
Well, he does say, the guy says, "I have a stutter. That's why I say so long." Because he says so long, and so then Sam's like, "Okay," and he gets up to go. He's like, "Where are you going?" It's like, "You said so long. I thought we were done." And he goes, "No, I say that because I got a stutter. It helps me with a stutter."
Right. But it's just, I don't know. It was just handled. I had forgotten about all these things. And I think over the past few years, perhaps I paid more attention to them. And so I just go, oh, and I often keep a catalog of it, even if it perhaps doesn't take me out of the movie or ruin the movie for me. I find it interesting when you see the differences in, oh, wow, I don't know if we would have made this choice or that choice, or, is it justified? I have no idea. Is it, the language of film and how we portray character has changed. And, I think that's part of discussing film, especially as we make our way through society
I wanted to mention two things about the guy at the, when he goes to the antique store, because he goes there because one of the victims worked there. And that's where Sam meets this very aggressive gay dude. One of the problems, by the way, about what you were pointing out, you're totally right, but there's also the problem of context, is that it's not just that he's an aggressive gay dude. It's that there are no gay dudes in the movies at this time except for this character.
That's what
because you think about the one in Daughters of Darkness, who is also similarly, we are meant to be put off by the character. What strikes me as funny is when this guy refers to one of the victims. By the way, this is Werner Peters. He's a German film actor, and he was in so many movies that it's crazy, including in the United States. But anyway, he refers to one of the victims, he says, was herself gay, and he says, but I don't care. The word he uses, I think, is sexist. And what's funny is, I just wanted to bring that up because
racist. He says racist.
Racist. He says.
He goes, "I'm not." No. Okay, so let's back up. Let's back up. So the reason he's even there Sam is there is because the victim worked at this art studio at one point. And so then he's like, "Tell me about when she, the day she disappeared." And he goes, "Well, she had just sold this painting, and by the way, I think she liked girls. No, I don't care. I'm not racist," which I thought was so weird.
So before we get to about the painting, I just want to point out something wild about that. I don't know what word was used in the original script. Who knows? Who knows what he actually said? Translated as, "I'm not a racist." It's the closest they could come up with to a bigot against gay people.
Right.
And what's wild about that is I watched recently this movie called Partners from like 1981. And this movie had Ryan O'Neal and John Hurt. And it was about, studly, straight Ryan O'Neal has to partner up with rather slight, sometimes effeminate gay John Hurt. And they have to investigate a bunch of murders that are taking place in the gay parts of Los Angeles. And the sergeant says, the lieutenant goes, listen, you got to take this case. And he goes, I don't know if I want to do that. And he goes, don't be a sexist, because they didn't have a word either. It's wild. I mean, I'm sure the word homophobia existed somewhere, but in a movie that's trying to say, don't be a jerk, look into their murders, please, there's no word that's just on the shelf for these people to use. I just found that fascinating, which is like 9 or 10 years after this movie. But anyway, painting. The painting becomes the next big thing. The next MacGuffin that they're going to be chasing, which is this painting that got sold. He takes a mimeograph of it. It is of a. Well, Julia, do you want to tell us what's happening in the painting?
He takes a mimeograph of it. It's not a mimeograph. It's just whatever copy the guy had, like maybe a print even. I think it's a print. It's not I don't think it's a mimeograph. But anyway, I think mimeographs are purple, aren't they? Isn't that?
I don't remember. I just remember they smell good.
Point is, it's a copy. So so he says, "Can I have this copy?" The guy says no, and then he's like, "Please," and he's like, "Okay." So he takes it, and it's a painting that has a murder being committed in the snow. So you've got like a figure with a black hat and a black coat, just like the figure that we keep seeing, and they seem to be stabbing a woman on the snow.
Snow, yeah.
So then he's like, "Well, who's the artist?" Oh my God, this is probably my favorite scene in the whole film. He's like, "Who's the artist?" And he's like, "Oh, he won't see you. He doesn't like see people. He doesn't like people, whatever." So he's like, "No, just tell me." And so he goes, and it's totally Rapunzel, like let down your hair business, where the guy has
out into BFE. I mean,
I said that he was like I said he was like the Onceler from
He closed off the house so that the only way you can get to it is if he lowers a ladder so that you can climb up. So he does that for whatever reason. He decides to let this guy, because he compliments his painting, I guess. He lets him come up. He's got a bunch of cats. One of them's a couple of them he's gotten out. He's like, "Why do you keep the cats in cages?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't want them to get out. I'm trying to fatten them up." He's like, "Why?" And he goes, "Because they're better to eat that way." And he's like,
I was so as a cat person,
sorry, Tony.
He's just giving him food, and he's like, "Oh, I've never eaten cats." And the guy's like, "Oh no."
It's so. I love the reaction.
Like, out of there.
We should back it up though, because a couple things. Before this, and the painting is weird and violent as well.
Mm-hmm.
But before this, we're also getting, he's getting calls from the killer going, "Hey, look, I'll let you go if you just let me do my thing.
Yeah.
But if not, I'm going to kill you and your girlfriend.
Yeah.
This is going to be really bad."
Sam is getting those calls. Yeah.
And then also, but before he goes to visit,
does this deter our scrappy protagonist?
No, of course not. Because not only does it not deter him, his girlfriend, long-suffering girlfriend, goes, "Hey, we're supposed to pack up and leave. We're supposed to pack up everything and move to America in 8 hours."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah, babe, but I got to investigate this thing that I'm not even a detective. I'm a writer. It's going to take me at least, all told, you got to think it's going to take him at least 6 hours, because hour and a half there, hour and a half back, 3 hours, plus whatever time he's going to get there, all that stuff." So he has an 8-hour window, and we all know how flights go anyway.
Yeah.
And he got 8 hours
to drive out to BFE.
He takes a train.
Well, but
it's
then
an hour and a half train.
Right, that's right. He's got
to
train involved.
But then he doesn't have any plan to get to this guy's house. He doesn't know. He knows.
Yeah, no, he clearly has no intention of keeping this flight, and there's no way. But so when he's at the guy's house, the guy says that the painting is based on something that really happened, which I thought was interesting.
His fiance was the victim.
Was it his fiance? Forgive me. I don't remember what the artist connection was.
I thought he said that, and now I feel stupid. Somebody's going to call me on this. I thought it was. Yeah, I had to look it up. I feel so dumb.
Well, regardless, he knew the girl.
I can't remember what he says, but the point is, it's a real story of somebody who got stabbed, and we will find out later that is the person who got stabbed at the beginning of the movie, right? Am I right about that, or no?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the person who got stabbed at the beginning of the film is also the one who got stabbed in the painting, and so she went in to that. That she's the one who went into the studio. To the gallery, saw that painting and recognized it, and she's the one who bought it. So,
yes.
But we don't know
And-
that at that time. We find that out later.
Right, but this is a major clue. Is that this painting is attached to some real killings? So which would lead you to believe somebody connected to this painting might be doing the killings? Maybe the original murderer. Who knows? But the and then the cats. And Tony, once again, my heart sank when I saw this because I know you love cats, and I apologize.
It's what it is, but it's definitely like, oh, dude, are you? Oh, I forgot about that.
No, he like completely freaks out. Like he like leaves fast. He can't say anything.
No.
He clearly is like about to throw up and doesn't want to do it in the guy's house.
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking, by the way, about this artist with the wild hair. Set aside the cat business. This artist with the wild hair in this farmhouse way out in the middle of nowhere, creating his work. Hey, good for him. But it's a weird place. I mean, yeah, he's to get in, you have to climb a ladder. And I mean,
totally tangled.
You just kind of imagine, like, I cannot imagine, we all like artists, right? But I cannot imagine wanting to go, if this guy's name is Leon, nobody's going to want to go, hey, after the show, we're going to go hang out at Leon's place. I cannot imagine a bunch of like bohemians like getting into a little car and going out to Leon's place and climbing up the ladder.
Well,
and
I mean, Leon does that because he doesn't want those people around either.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
That's true.
That's the thing, is Leon decided he's had enough of all of that as well.
Yeah, that's true.
He's like he's kind of like how Alan Moore has had enough of things.
Yes, very much. With
Lately.
The wild hair and everything. Yes, that's right.
I can't really blame him, but there came a point where Alan Moore said, I've had enough of all of this. Go pound sand. I'm going to go do Alan Moore stuff over. I'm going to have a wizard battle with another comics creator.
Yes.
That's the thing. And, that's, you can read about it.
It's funny because we read about recluses, like famous recluses, I don't know, I've lost right now. Oh, Greta Garbo. But you always picture them like hanging out in a really swanky apartment and, I don't know, reading or something. You don't picture this sort of cluttered, weird place with this unbathed wild man, and his paints and his cats and everything. It's a fascinating. I mean, I like how Argento is just littering this movie with all these extra characters that are more interesting than they have to be. For sure. Because the outline says Sam goes to visit the artist, and gets a clue. And then when you beef it out, it's this weird thing.
It's also, there's also some great bits. Not only do you get this crazy artist guy who's just got, he's got cats stored around, he's got paintings stored around that he may or may not sell.
Yeah.
But I also really love this just bizarre dinner scene where they're drinking from each other from the same cup and eating off the same plate and trading all of that. It ends up that it's horrible in retrospect, but all of that business is just bizarre.
Yeah.
It has a naturalistic feel, but also unnatural. It's such a strange way of playing the scene out.
Yes.
Like, who does that?
It's cool. There's a coolness to it. Great. I mean, look how cool Sam is, that he's willing to sit down at this guy's table and drink wine from the same cup and like just like they're it's like Riggs and Murtaugh eating spaghetti out of the same bowl. There's a quick familiarity that's neat. It tells you a lot about our guy Sam, who doesn't have a lot of characteristics really. Other
than breezily being a hunky writer.
Yes. That's right.
Again, he's so, I don't know if it's because he's supposed to be American, but his whole thing.
He said he's American. Yeah, character's American.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, if that's the caricature, because his whole thing with Julia is he's kind of only really there when he feels like he should be there.
Yeah.
He's not there to help. He leaves her alone. Like, the cops have it. It's like, you've been around all these cops. Did that stop any of these other murders?
Right.
And, when she's attacked by the killer, of course, he's not there.
Yep.
He's decided, again, 8 hours before their very important flight to, go check out this crime, because now he's
not there, and neither are the cops that are supposed to be protecting them.
Who? Either of you, can you walk me through the attack on Susie Kendall? Because it's what happens next. While our guy is headed back from BFE,
it's also, by the way, it's legitimate in Italy that there's train strikes and all manner of things. So the idea that you have a timeline and you just go, well, no, it'll work out. An hour and a half there, hour and a half back. Patently, if she was Italian, she would go, "Are you kidding me? You have no. We're not making this flight, right?"
Yeah, I think none of what would have happened if she were Italian. I think it's all just he doesn't care, and she's too British to like get upset about it.
Yeah, because at the point where he says that, taking a train, and there's 3 hours. The train part alone is going to take 3 hours, and I hate to harp on this, but just how it's portrayed and just their interactions as a couple. Anybody else would have gone, "You're not." So we're just skipping the flight then, right? Like, you want me to call in? Do you want me to just cancel the tickets? Because we're going to have to change them. There's no way you're making it back. And but he doesn't call him on his crap at all.
Yeah, that's true. Well,
that was frustrating to me because I'm a very no, we have to get our boarding pass. We have to, but that's his character is, nah, let me go into the prison. How about, you're calling me to threaten me? The cops will take care of it. It's all good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think partly, though, it's logical to think that if I'm getting threatened, then it's in my best interest to get this person caught before they kill me.
Yeah.
I guess in the world of this kind of movie, that is true. But that's, and that, you're right. Jessica Fletcher would also keep trying because that's just the way they roll, But for what it's worth, when he says, "I need to visit a farm in the outskirts of Rome," not even Rome, Campesino, she throws things at him for what it's worth.
Which gets so mad.
She finds
legitimately so.
So anyway, they there's one other. Okay, well, Julia, can you walk us through, to the extent that you remember, the details, the attack on Susie Kendall as Julia?
So
she's back in the apartment.
So she's in the apartment, and the person starts pounding on the door, or like tapping at the door with with a tool, like some kind of stabby thing, and she immediately is quite terrified, and rightfully so, and I think goes to call, and then the phone maybe has been cut.
He cuts the phone.
The killer cuts the phone line, cuts the electricity, I think, maybe the lights, I don't remember. But anyway, so now she's in the apartment and the killer's trying to get in. And so there's a small hole being created in the door. So clearly they're, like I say, tapping with some kind of pointy, stabby thing. So then she's trying to get out through the window, but for whatever reason, they've decided to make this apartment building completely inescapable in case of fire or other emergencies, because she cannot open the window. She cannot break the window. She's using a really heavy candle holder, candlestick thing, and it gets stuck in the window, which, I mean, it didn't even crack. It's just somehow it's so
those pains
just gets stuck there. So then Jason goes, maybe there's a window in the bathroom. So she's like, she hears Jason and she runs into the bathroom. Window there. And, but she can't get out that window either. And so then she gets the smart idea that she's going to try to stab the killer through the hole that the killer has created. But she, for whatever reason, decides to scream as she runs. And so the killer kind of goes, "Oh, wait, what? Whoa." It's a backs up, does not get stabbed.
I can say that this is both a fascinating part of
pretty scary
Italian horror thriller and also frustrating is the fact that at no point she spends a lot of time screaming and lying on the ground and rolling around, and not a lot of time grabbing a poker, a bat, or a piece of anything.
Any weapon. Well, she already used her candlestick to try to break the window to get stuck.
But in any apartment, if you know that there's a killer, at some point grab something. Toilet lid works great, by the way. It's very heavy. It's porcelain. But at no point.
But she doesn't.
In a very typical. But but that's the problem. This is one of the things that is both part of the genre, and you just kind of accept it, and is also sometimes frustrating. Is how much time she's resourceful when she pushes the heavy dresser in front of the door, and she does several resourceful things. But the other part of that is her going. And just rolling around and being completely ineffectual. And it's just because she's such a strong character other times, it's that part of this genre just bugs me. I don't know.
So the
because
thing,
it's so like, oh no, I just like grab something. Let's take care of this. And I know it's part of it's just part of it.
so I
But
started to wonder at this point whether her actual boyfriend was the killer because,
sure.
except for the fact that he was watching the first crime, but because all of a sudden he goes, Julia, and I'm like, are you not seeing the killer at the door right now? Like we can hear you both outside. So the killer somehow runs away without him getting, I don't know exactly what happened outside the door. We don't see it, but he interrupts the killer trying to break in. So, so Sam's back and he's managed to interrupt. By the way, we've forgotten to mention that up until now, the killer has been calling Sam and whispering, and that was so annoying to me. That's another reason why I was sure it was a woman, because I was like, if it was a man, they just would have disguised their voice. But if it's a woman, whispering will make it harder to understand to know that it's a woman. So, but yeah, the killer's just whispering and laughing, and then there was like another noise. That whole thing just annoyed the crowd. That really did annoy me a whole lot. But anyway, so
Well, then
yeah.
it's over. At that point, the scene's over because the killer runs away, and she has survived, and she's over it. They're what I can't remember. Here's what I can't remember. So one thing you mentioned, the noise. So they have a recording of the laughing killer. They know there's a noise in the background. This is something we see in like The Fugitive, right? Hey, what's that in the background? Get more like high tech stuff, right? We're all CSI now.
I love that. I love that the tech in this is actually really high tech for the time.
Yeah.
They've got stuff connected to the phone. They've got a microphone. They've kitted that out so there's a reel-to-reel at its place. In addition to all the computer stuff, that's really cool. And I think putting that all in as your first directorial debut, that's pretty awesome, actually.
Yes.
A lot of crime dramas tend to be a lot less low tech. A lot more low tech. A lot less innovative in that respect, more gangstery, and taking those chances, I think, is really awesome.
It feels so grounded, and I think again, what it feels especially grounded is that it gives you more information, but it doesn't solve it. The tech is like, yep, that's a sure interesting sound. I've banged it against like 1,000 other things, and I don't know yet what it is. So and that's a perfectly believable scenario for that.
Well, it's like, people go all the time, hey, why can't we get this amount of data?
Right.
And it's usually a resource / how you're capturing things. So you can capture tons of data, but when you need to parse the data is the problem. Like, what are you looking for? How do you extract that? And that's really hard. It's not, it's like everybody laughs at the Mission Impossible where Tom Cruise searches for Job, but it's spelled J-O-B, which would turn up 5 kabillion hits.
Excellent point.
Type job in. Like, because the computer doesn't know it's Job,
Right.
But instead he goes, oh, look, Job, it's the Bible. Here it is. Not like, are you looking for jobs? So, that kind of crap is where
Tom Cruise is then going to be like getting these search results and little ads in his Facebook feed for the rest of the
exactly.
Going, hey, Ethan Hunt, we hear you're looking for a job.
Exactly.
You want job?
As long as they're observing COVID guidelines.
Right.
But right. But in this respect, especially, like, they're really trying to kind of push forward a lot of this tech. It's really neat. Of course, eventually they figure out, like, hey, that's a bird call.
Yes. Right, his buddy.
He's like, that sounds really familiar. Oh, that's right. It's this bird, with the crystal. That's what the name of the film comes from.
The sound is a very peculiar Siberian bird that happens to be
in real life. In real life, that bird is not real. It's just they used a gray crowned crane, according to the IMDb. But it's
well, good to know. All right, but there's a bird, and another will eventually work out. There is a payphone near where this bird is in the zoo. We left out one thing that I need to mention, which is that all along, also, the killer has been arranging for someone has been either trying to kill or arranging to kill Sam. I know we've gone long, so I don't want to take too long on this, but Reggie Nalder, the amazing, unforgettable, inimitable Reggie Nalder, appears as an assassin who has been sent by somebody to kill Sam, and he is scary as heck.
He is scary as heck, and he's got this
it's great
burn scars on his face that make him look terrifying. But he at first I was thinking, what kind of idiot assassin wears a bright yellow jacket? But then it turns out that, he's not an idiot after all. He just is going to blend in with all the other yellow jackets of this group of people that are at this hotel.
Like little convention that's happening at a hotel. It's brilliant. He chases them all over the place, shooting, doesn't manage to kill him. But yes, in the end, he just disappears into a crowd of yellow jacketed people in a hotel room.
And it's done so well too, because everybody's thinking, what an idiot for standing out.
Yeah.
Yellow jacket. And then when he finally busts into the ballroom, it's such a great moment because it's so disorienting and perfect. But up until that, he's gonna stand. What assassin does that? What a great twist!
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think the assassin had to like work that out ahead of time. This guy who's called they work out as an assassin called Needles. That he would have had to think, oh, what's near here where I'm going to try and kill this guy? Well, there's a fighters convention, so I guess what do they wear? All right, got it. Boom, there's my escape. That's really cool. You can see how Needles has a career.
Like it's like Joker, like having the school bus and driving out into the
absolutely
into the line of school buses. Yep.
You're right. I think this has been used. I don't know if this is the first time this gag has been used, but it's going to get used again and again and again. And I always love it.
Great study. I also like the murder. We didn't talk about. We talked about some of the POV. There's a lot of great POV and a lot of great POV switches where you're going from one person's perspective. They'll either cut and it'll be that person's perspective going through, like maybe it's the killer. Although cut. And you think that, but then it'll cut to a POV of the killer, maybe dialing a phone. One of my favorite, very European, very 70s, is the woman who changes and has, it seems so strange now, but her last smoke of the night. The nightcap cigarette, which is so very European and also so. And
she's wearing this sort of nightie, I guess.
It changes into this nightie, but it's great because we cut from her just, turn out the lights. Yeah, okay, I'm having my last smoke of the night. And then you switch to POV shot of her smoking and looking around. And that moment where she looks around and then looks back and there's someone in her doorway that then rushes.
Yes, yeah.
Just so well done. And it's unexpected in the way it's changing. Now, there's probably film students who are even more studious than I, who go, oh, no, there was a 40s movie that did this or that, right? Like you can always, and I'm always ready to learn if that's the case.
Absolutely, yeah.
Argento here does feel like it's another one of those changing the language of film in the way, even if you've seen a gag like this before or a scene, the way he plays with it and turns it around is really what makes it interesting. And it's the reason these shots and these setups have been ripped off so much is because they're just so good. Why wouldn't you?
Right.
It's a perfect setup. It's done really well. It builds this tension because things are happening outside, but in this case you don't see it. You don't expect it to play out like that with the camera switch.
No, it's a really, really good gag. Even though that something is not going to go well with this girl, because that's why we've met her in a movie like this.
Right.
That's a big surprise when the person is standing there. And it's another, very frightening, pretty brutal scene. I think if you, trigger warning on this one. I mean, it's it's another razor killing. No, this one's a knife killing.
Yeah, so the knife that the killer carries around, the same knife that drills through the door, etc., that wants to kill Julia.
Big ass knife. So yes. Now, can somebody tell me, because the movie wraps up pretty soon after this, can somebody tell me at what point does Julia get?
So the whole wrap up is why. Well, the whole wrap up is they question the husband.
Oh, right.
We now go, oh, well, he ends up
because of the phone being by the bird. So they're like, oh, the phone is by the house of Julia and her husband, and so it's got to be the husband.
Not Julia, Monica, the victim,
Monica,
and her husband.
And so he ends up falling out of the window through misadventure slash
Yeah.
things happen, and he goes, "Hey, I did it."
Yeah, I'm the
While
killer.
they're concerned with that, Julia disappears, and then it's up to Sam to look for her. She disappears along with the his friend, the policeman who was helping him. Now the one thing, and eventually that turns into him. He's tracking her all over the city. He ends up in the art gallery and gets a gigantic thing. I thought the spiked installation would have spiked him when she pushes it off. The one thing I didn't get, because there's also great bits where she is tied up.
Yeah, Julia is tied up.
Julia is under the bed, and she can't. She's right there, and this is another very Argento thing that we're seeing is a character who's helpless to prevent things that are going to happen, or very horrific, brutal things that are going to happen. The killer has killed the friend policeman. Has tied up Julia, is going to kill her. But while he's chasing her, one thing that didn't make a lot of sense is, at what point does he not recognize he's back at the gallery?
And he walks. He's doing all these back streets, and he chases the killer. And basically, what he would have to recognize is that he's a block away, exactly a block away, on the other side of the block from the gallery.
Come on.
Yeah. That's true.
It was one of those so you didn't realize you were going into the back of the gallery?
No, if it were me, I would not have a clue because I have no sense of direction. So if I went in one way and I came out a different way, I would have no idea that I was still close to the same thing. And especially because he's not from there, so I could see it.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
but it bugged me because this is a place that's he's visited that gallery several times since then, just to get clues and do stuff.
Yeah.
And that, again, you're right, and you walk around enough streets, depending on what city you're in or area you're in, especially in Europe where it's been built and built and built and built. It is very easy to lose your sense of direction if you're not from around there.
Definitely.
But the fact that it's such an important spot in this movie, that bugged me. But I think we're supposed to think exactly what you're saying, Julia, that, hey, in the moment, you don't notice these things. And especially because, you're around there, but how many other things are around there?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But once they get into the gallery, the murderer is revealed. It wasn't the husband after all. It is, in fact, Monica with her super long hair and a knife, and she is crazy as heck. And what she does first is drop a gigantic antler installation, basically. A big, gigantic, heavy painting multimedia thing covered in spikes on our hero, but luckily it's only spiky on like the half that doesn't hit him.
Right, I thought he was dead. Like I thought, oh man, this is it for this.
Yeah,
because she's standing on it and everything. Like if the spikes would have, or at least he's going to be extremely injured.
He should have been dead for sure with that thing falling on him.
Yeah, so lucky him,
But anyway, so now we've got the stupid. This is the part of the thing that I hated, and also that the actress hated. She actually thinks that really hated being in this film, thought it was beneath her, and feels like it ruined her career because she thought it was so ridiculous to have to be like this laughing hysterically maniacal murderer who is it's just, and I thought it was really silly.
Well, the psychobabble at the end where she was in an institution, was a victim, was in an institution, saw this painting, reacted that way, became crazy. The fact that not only is it just definitely like what? None of that makes any much sense at all. But they also frame it over, oh man, it's a good thing Julie and I are going to America now. We're getting on this plane and flying out. And it's an overdub.
I wonder, do you think, Tony, they just were like, we need to wrap this up fast because
it feels that way? And that's another thing that I find a lot of very similar pictures have these, well, let's wrap it up. Here's the thing.
Yes.
You're like, that's the explanation for real? Like, this is...
Well, and the wrap-up is that she got triggered, like she was sane until suddenly she wasn't anymore because she saw that painting, which reminded her of the time that she got stabbed, I guess.
Yeah, her trauma. And so she was acting out her trauma. Again, I don't know Jack about... This is the story. She's acting out her trauma by becoming the perpetrator. So she's killing people, and her husband is killing people to hide his wife's crimes. And
I don't know that he killed anybody.
No, he was going to kill. He was trying to stop her.
Yeah, he was
the whole
trying to stop her. Yeah. I don't think.
But both of them are calling the guy and trying to get him, calling Sam to get him to lay off.
I guess true love.
But I don't think.
I don't know.
So
I guess
that's
is that the mark? Is that the mark of, hey, Julia,
massive
hey
cover-ups?
Jason,
Yes.
would you fall out of
No,
fall out of an
no,
apartment
would
and
not.
Yes.
take the
No.
fall from me if I
I
was
would take
crazy
the fall
killer?
for Julia in a heartbeat. Yes.
And then you confess to my murders? I don't think so.
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
would not ask
disturbing in the way that when people go post memes about how Harley Quinn and Joker are relationship goals, and you're like, ooh, no, that's
you.
hmm. Like, I
Not
kind
at
of
all.
get where you mean from devotion wise, but really you should evaluate if that is not a healthy relationship, and please strive for better. My friend,
All right, we'll do our best. It's
yeah.
okay.
Like I just wonder if there's some people like, I just want to know, would you fall out of a building and confess to all of my murders if you were dying? Is that the extent of our love? It's true love, true devotion, I suppose, right there.
Yeah. So and that's the end. I mean, as with
And then
a
we
lot of
fly
these,
off to America while
yeah,
some nonsensical psychobabble happens.
right,
It's just,
right,
oh, there we go. That's the end. Ta-da!
yeah.
Which is a shame because there's so much cool stuff in the movie that the wrap up does
I don't
feel.
mind it, Tony, and the reason I don't is because it goes fast. I mean, it's literally it's just a very quick wrap up. It's like I don't want to. It's exactly what happens in Psycho as well. A very boring scene because somebody comes out, explains what happened, and off they go.
Yeah, but there's a nice cool bit there. It's not our happy couple flying off and
That's a good point.
have a great life in America. Like, yeah, I mean, all that happened, but
Yeah, no, that's a solid point. So
Yeah, I would have liked it because I thought the twist of it being her was really good because, of course, you didn't expect it because she's the first victim. But I was so annoyed by the whispering and the laughing that it just the rest of it ruined. It made it not be a perfect film. Like otherwise, I think it was almost perfect. I think if it weren't for that, aside from like what you're saying, the societal mores and whatever. But as far as films go, I thought it was really good, except for that. That's the only thing that just really bugged me. But yeah, I think it's fantastic. Well, I mean, kind of doing my closing thoughts.
all right. In fact, we should get our final thoughts. So the order we did was Julia. So Julia, you were just saying. So why don't you continue? Overall, I mean, we've gone deep on the bird with the crystal plumage, but is this something out of all the shows that we've watched? Do you think this is one that you would definitely recommend to people? I mean, it sounds like you would.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and like I say, stylistically, like if you do like Alfred Hitchcock, it's it's not as good as Alfred Hitchcock, but it's reminiscent, and there's some really interesting performances. Like I say, except for the whispering and the laughing, that I thought it was interesting. I like the twist. I like some of the story ideas are really just so bizarre. Like the whole thing with the guy with the cats is so weird. I mean, stuff like that just makes it really memorable, I think.
agreed.
I think it's easily as good as Frenzy. So it depends on your Hitchcock, but that guy had a lot of work. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great movie. It's a great introduction. If you want to go back, I mean, a lot of people will be Suspiria, but definitely there's a lot of reasons to watch this film. Again, the way he's playing with the language of cinema, the way the crime drama is played out, interesting characters moving back and forth. There's great interactions, a lot of playing with camera work in a way that you wouldn't expect. Playing with expectations. I mean, viewing it now where people have seen years and years and years of people riffing on this, that's where it gets harder because you go, oh, I've seen this before. And you're like, yeah, because it came from this.
Right.
It's not old hat. This is why you study this. This is where it came from. This is straight from the source.
Yeah.
And I think that's seeing that is important because you're seeing and again, Argento has his influences, right?
Yeah.
So you can go back, like I always advocate, you can go back before this and see, find what he saw that made him think of this. And I think that's fascinating too. But as far as Giallo, as far as Italian horror goes and what leads to Suspiria and beyond, when you can go straight to the source. I love the way Tarantino, I love Tarantino films, but a lot of people decided, hey, I'm just going to do Tarantino. It's like, no. You really, when you have a person who's really great at these kind of remixes or rearranging, it behoves you even more to go back, because then you can reinterpret your those influences in your own way, in your own art. The same way with, I love The Mandalorian. I think I have been I like some new Star Wars stuff, but I'm not as big a fan as I was when I was a kid. And it's pained me because a lot of my friends did, read all the novels and all the stuff. So you watch The Mandalorian, and you go, oh, it's a space western, it's this and that. But when you see, it's really fascinating. Like, go beyond, if people can go beyond that. There's a few people who posted memes and stuff like that, where this scene is directly out of this movie. This comes from this western. This comes from this samurai film. This comes from different.
Yeah.
Like, the reason it's enjoyable is, Lucas with the original Star Wars was, part of it was the Hidden Fortress, or all of these things that, Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, all of the stuff that kind of made it, and you can see those influences. And so not just stopping at, ooh, I want to do my own Mandalorian now. Like, no, go back, like, watch the Kurosawa movie.
Yeah.
Watch Sorcerer, or watch watch some Man with No Name movies, and go back before that, and you'll get this straight from the source view of things. And I think that's what this is in a lot of ways. Things you've seen aped a million times that have almost in some ways have become parody are in some of their purest forms here. And that's that's fascinating and amazing. Even the parts that I feel kind of rushed or are not the best, you're willing to look over a lot of that, just because it's so well put together. To be a directorial debut is also pretty darn amazing, all things considered.
Wonderful. Thank you. To that, I could add nothing other than thank you for joining me and discussing this. I am so happy that we did. Let's get our endorsements. I can't wait to find out if, I know that we've all been extraordinarily busy, so you'll be forgiven if there's nothing to endorse. But I'm just dying to find out. Julia, do you have anything for us?
Well, we did watch the season finale of The Mandalorian because everybody had told us we had to. And sure enough, there's a fun surprise in it. So even if you didn't watch the rest of the series, it's kind of fun.
We should not spoil that one. I just want to say,
just saying, that's fun.
Yeah.
I today decided to revisit a bunch of episodes of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, which is the Jerry Seinfeld show. That show is so fun because it has so many great things. It has like all these wonderful comedians, and awesome cars that are really cool. Whoever does the photography for the coffee places, it makes you want coffee so bad because it just makes all the coffee look so good and all the pastries. Anyway, and then they're just. I think Jerry has really grown as a human being over the decades, and he's a really good interviewer. He's really interesting. Like, they have really deep conversations, and yet they're all hilarious. So if you've never watched it, it's on Netflix. You can pick the ones that have the people that you like. Barack Obama even has one. There's one with him, and then there's some with like Don Rickles and Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks, like all these people from way back, and then of course many current people, Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers. Anyway, but it's just really really fun. Tina Fey, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. So that's something that I recommend if anybody just wants a laugh.
Great tip. That's a great tip. Thank you. Tony, what do you got?
I'm going to mention something a friend of mine brought back up that I'd seen several months ago, that it was Jess Cargill was posting on, and she says, hey, we saw this movie. We watched it the other night, and it reminded me of a movie called Beyond Tomorrow, which is also called And So Goodbye. It's also called Beyond Christmas. And she reminded me, and I was like, I think I mentioned it before, possibly at the time, but I thought it was cool. And it's yet another recommendation that happened through, if you like this, you may like that. And the algorithm on Tubi and Amazon, Netflix, it hasn't worked in a long time for me, but Amazon and Tubi have really stepped up in you watch this, how about this? And Beyond Tomorrow was just one of those on a lark movies that I watched. And, it's a good Christmas film. Your mileage may vary, of course, black and white. I think it's fun just to kind of go into it and look at this kind of whimsical version. I think there's a colorized as well as a black and white version. I want to say I saw the black and white one. I found it fascinating. I thought it was really cool. And, sadly, this is our last episode technically before the new year.
Well,
so...
let's rephrase that. Thankfully, this is the last episode of 2020. Good riddance.
Oh yeah, there's a certain like, hey, we're not going to do one before the New Year's, right?
Right.
And it's this year has been really tough. So I'm also advocating. Ray and I are going to hang out this week and watch some movies, play some video games, and it's tough on everybody, and everybody's mileage may vary on. Sometimes the holidays are even tougher. It's especially tough when you're isolated. We have more friends that way. I hope that we as a podcast can help where we can, and please hang out and reach out to us or any friends if you can, if you need to. And I really, that's been my meditation a lot lately. Is it's all tough. We're all going through things. I feel both lucky and sometimes guilty because Rain and I have done okay so far. And a lot of people I know haven't. And I hope that our podcast and our Facebook page, and I hope that everybody can reach out. Sean had just posted about the Castle of Horror book, and I was reminiscing about the time when we had chat open where people could just kind of join and chime in, and that although that wasn't a streamline, it was an interesting part of our podcast history. It was.
I wish there were a way to do that. Maybe periodically, Tony, we might consider doing a live show where people could.
Yeah, that would be awesome. But I just that level of, hey, let's all reach out and hang out, because I think that's the core of a lot of our show. Mm-hmm. And I think it's reinforced in the book. And again, not to make it about us, but I hope that even if things are really, really tough, that even if we can't provide that you reach out to friends and if possible, and I hope we can all make it through to a better time. It's just stuff I've been thinking about a lot lately, and trying to find that balance between, wow, I've been really lucky, and how can I reach out and help? I've tried to give this person who had a lot of cool books, Mike McPadden passed this week. Mm-hmm. And I was able to give some to the memorial GoFundMe for that. He was always really nice. So a lot of it's been a reflection, not to get too preachy or maudlin, but it's just what's been on my mind. I hope we continue to improve empathy as well. I don't know. I'm sorry that I'm kind of rambling.
Oh, I like that.
Everything that I've been thinking about, I want to thank everybody who's joined us on the podcast, who's listened in, I want to thank, you guys for being friends. And, I'm sad that Drew isn't here, but he's, taking care of family. He's taking,
he did call us to tell us that.
Yeah, and he came in beforehand and was, we got to talk, and it's meant a lot this year to be able to hang out with everyone every week, and I really appreciate that. And I want to thank everybody who has been hanging out with us when they listen to this. I really, really appreciate it. You're as important as us doing the podcast in many ways, because it gives us a reason to keep going, and also a reason to keep hanging out as friends. So I don't know. Again, sorry to be kind of rambly, but I just really, really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to, after the New Year's, getting back to it. And I hope that all of your holidays and all of your New Year's are the best that they can be. And thanks to everybody.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I just want to mention, you mentioned the just shocking sudden death of Mike McPadden, which is a terrible loss. I loved his show.
He's always super nice.
I loved his books. I didn't know him personally at all.
You interviewed him once, though, right?
I did interview him, yes, and I was so happy to do it because it was a really great conversation. And I want to think you might have said, is that possible? Did you introduce me to him?
I'm pretty sure, because I met him at Housecore Horror Fest.
Okay.
About his heavy metal book, and of course, heavy metal movies are gonna. Heavy metal horror is near and dear to my heart in a huge way. It's just super nice. He and his wife were there, and he was selling books, and so there's only X amount you can hang out. But every time I would go by and I talked to him, and of course bought the book, and he was super awesome. Then very opinionated guy about a lot of things, but also had a lot of passion about it. And
I loved his opinions, even when I disagreed with them, and I loved his show. He had two shows, at least. There was the Crackpot Cinema, which was crazy. I've taken recommendations off of that, just like Film Freaks Forever. But I'll listen to the show and they'll go, "Oh, I got to try that." And the other one was called 70 Films We Watched in the 70s, or Movies We Watched in the 70s, and that's just been so great. So, and his most recent book, Teen Movie Hell, I interviewed him about that. So anyway, Bazillion Points, which is his publisher, they have a set of his 3 books. And if you order that set, they are giving all the proceeds to Mike McPadden's family. So I ordered a copy, and I think people should. It's at Bazillion Points. It's the Silver Scream Shock Box, and they vowed to donate the proceeds to Mike's family. That loss was extremely sudden and a shock.
I look at it as, I had to. Well, hey, how much did you know this guy? Well, I didn't know him that well. I mean, we hung out, and then we were friends on Facebook for a while, and then I don't know if we were at the end, but who knows? It's Facebook. Like, you can't blame anybody on anything. I'd have to recheck. It doesn't matter really, but people, it doesn't matter, because I would want people. I gave because I always liked, all of our interactions that we had. They weren't a ton, but they were cool.
Yeah,
and I would want people to do the same for me if you could. We live at a time where not everyone can help. There's a lot of distress. That's kind of what I was getting at. And financial distress, all kinds of things. So when I could help, I wanted to. And I just hope that we all can do what we can do. But yeah, that's a great point. Like, definitely does that. His publisher doing that and then giving the proceeds, like, that's important.
Yeah. His new episode today in 70 Movies We Saw in the 70s just went up today. I haven't listened, so I have no idea if there's a message or anything, but it just went up today. And here's what's interesting. They're talking about ice castles, that skating movie. And the hosts, which is Mike McPadden and Ben, whose name is escaping me, their sisters, their actual blood sisters, joined them to talk about ice castles.
That's amazing. I think we bought that. We might have bought it on a VHS because Rain wanted to see it. I can't remember if we bought the DVD even. Yeah. Because she's like, oh man, you can't really get it. And so, yeah, somewhere.
I mean, I'm a sucker for stuff like that. So I've got to listen to that episode. But it sounds neat. I want to hear it. It's so strange that we just lost him like several days ago. He has a new episode this morning. And
that's a tough one. Yeah. I mean, that's kudos to them for putting that out and kind of, keeping that around. But yeah, it was very sudden and tragic to lose somebody who's kind of got a cool perspective and
absolutely, and such a
and passionate.
I don't know, a passionate truly counterculture perspective, where this is a dude, just so we understand, this is a dude who hates like everything that most of us geek out on. He really hated Star Wars. He really hated superheroes. He felt like that he traced everything back to Jaws and felt like that's when movies started to fail, is because of summer blockbusters. So that was where he was coming from. But boy, what a great dude. So interesting. I also want to. So besides 70 movies we saw in the 70s, I got to see, and I have not seen yet, All the Colors of Giallo, which is free on Prime, documentary about Giallo movies. I will watch it. And finally, I just wanted to mention, besides the Castle of Horror podcast book of great horror, which you mentioned, which people can get now, and comes out on Kindle in 9 days, so right in time for New Year's, we've got an audiobook, not out yet, but very soon. I'll be talking about this. Night of the Bookman, my surf horror movie. Night of the Bookman, my surf horror book, which takes place in 1958. Which harkens back to all these surf movies. The audiobook will be coming out very soon, and nice. I'm super excited. The voice is actually Lee Freiling, who is a voice actress who we met through the podcast. So that is just...
Oh, great.
Isn't that cool?
So can you post that book pack on our Facebook page, and probably Twitter would be good as well.
Yeah. I also did an article about it in Bleeding Cool. So,
nice.
So that's, yeah. So yes. And I'm just making a note to myself to do that.
Well, I hope everybody has a wonderful Christmas if you celebrate Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy Hanukkah.
We will be off for 1 week, and then we'll be back with something on like the 4th to the 5th.
We'll be back until after New Year. So happy New Year to everyone.
Yeah.
And thank you. Yeah, like you guys said, thank you for being there with us this year. And if you're listening to this, you made it. Congratulations.
Yeah. I'll see you guys. Bye. Have a wonderful evening.
Good evening.
Bye.
Yeah.